Ready to be your own boss? We've got what you need right here on the Leadership Voice. Welcome to the Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Today's show is about breaking away and starting your own company. And we have two entrepreneurs that have done just that. Joining us today are financial advisor Nazih Yehya and interior designer Raad Ghantous. We also have Professor J.J. Jackson to deliver today's leadership lesson. We have a lot of great things to discuss, so let's start things off with today's quote of the day. Today's quote is inspired by Henry David Thoreau. The one that goes alone can start today, but the one who ventures with others must wait until all are ready. It's now time to introduce our first guest. After 17 years of working as a managing partner at Mimi's Cafe, Nazih Yehya decided to take the path of entrepreneurship. As principal at Yehya Financial and Insurance Services, Nazih helps business owners and executives develop sound financial strategies. Nazih is an alumni of Cal State University Fullerton and is a graduate of New York Life's award-winning training program and has garnered national recognitions for his entrepreneurial work. He served on the executive council at Cal State Fullerton's College of Business and sits on the board of directors at the Center for Leadership. Welcome to the show, a great person and a personal friend, Nazih Yehya.
Hi.
Nazih, thank you so much for joining us on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So why don't we start things off? I would love to share with our audience, tell us about Mimi's Cafe and the work you did with them and how that all came about.
Sure. So I started with them from the bottom. I was a food server, learned the skills as a server, learned the company, got to know the systems very well and kept moving up in the company and became an assistant manager, later on a general manager. And then I was fortunate to be offered a managing partner position with the company.
What is a managing partner position? What does that actually
So pretty much
mean?
you have part ownership in a specific location. You build the place, you put the systems together, you hire everybody, you train everybody, and you make it a multi-million-dollar operation, and you get to join the profit.
So once you're a managing partner, you have equity, right?
Correct.
And at that point, you're in a great
Position.
situation, right?
Yes.
So you could have kept doing that forever, right?
Absolutely.
If you wanted to.
Absolutely.
So
It's a dream come true for a lot of people.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what had you thinking maybe you don't want to work for, but rather work for yourself?
Yeah. So I believe everything happens for a reason in life. I immigrated here for the American dream, and Mimi's gave me that platform to learn and develop my skills. But I knew that's not the end for me. I needed something more than that. And a lot of stuff happened that made me decide to eventually leave and go on my own venture.
So when you say you reached a point where you said, you know what, I could stay at Mimi's, I could stay in that situation as managing partner.
Yeah.
So what were some of the factors that weighed on you that made you think, all right, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, a lot of stuff. Personal. You know that you can do more, but you're limited in certain positions. Family. I started having children, and I wanted more freedom, more flexibility in my schedule. Income, of course, comes into and plays a big part of that decision. But then you have like a calling that comes to you eventually, and you know you have a different calling out there And certain situations that happened in my career with Mimi's allowed me to pursue a different opportunity.
Do you think you always knew that you wanted to have your own business?
No.
So when did you say, all right, I want to have my own business? Like, for sure, I definitely am going to do this. What was your moment of clarity?
It was my employees. It was the situation I was in the restaurant industry. I knew I need to do more to help others. And I was not able to do that as an employee of a company. I just had that calling when I saw my employees living paycheck to paycheck. Nobody's helping them with their financial situation. I start coaching them and training them on how to save, on how to take advantage of our 401k plan and how to invest. And that's when I woke up and said, this is what I should be doing.
So you actually, in a way, started the early parts of your career
pro bono.
By pro bono, but also in a sense through mentoring other employees and other folks in the company.
Correct. I got excited about our 401k plan. I started studying and understanding all the different investments and start coaching others. Started with my employees and others through the company on how to take advantage of our retirement plan, on how to save. And that's when I went to school, back to Cal State Fullerton at age 29 years old to pursue a finance degree.
No, that's terrific. And so in that process, helping other employees at Mimi's, helping your employees at Mimi's become more financially literate, more financially responsible, and making better financial decisions, in essence, you started to develop a purpose for that.
Yes. And it was a good purpose. I finally got excited about something. Of course, I love what I did, and I was really good at it. And the reason I'm good at my new career is because of everything I learned in the restaurant business. But I knew that for me to grow and be of better purpose to others and community and humanity in general, I should pursue this opportunity and keep working with others.
So in the financial industry, what financial services do you focus on?
So our title is financial advisors. So we help people with retirement planning, wealth management, investments in general, college savings, and then we also handle the insurance. So we participate in their insurance planning and designing an insurance portfolio for them.
So many people go into this industry, and it's a very high failure rate. So what did you do to build your business and make it successful that might help others?
Yeah, very good question. You come out of the restaurant industry not knowing much about the financial industry, right? I didn't have an MBA in finance. And the first thing I did is I made sure I have a good support system. That was a big thing for me, and that was my wife. She supported me through the whole process, both emotionally and financially, but more importantly, emotionally. Second, I needed to work with a company that is gonna give me the training, the platform, the resources for me to grow. And New York Life was an amazing avenue for me to establish that.
And so in that process, I don't know the extent to which New York Life teaches you how to build your business, but you really have built a very successful practice. So what were some of the ways that you built this practice? Like, what's been the key for you?
I tell this to all my junior advisors. We are not in the finance industry. We're really, as advisor, we're in the relationship industry. And for me, I knew how to build relationships because of the restaurant. I know how to multitask. So the success factor for me was relationship building, networking, getting to know people. I had a good knack for it, and I enjoyed meeting people. There's some that don't like to talk, don't like to be out, and this will not be a good industry for them. For me, I really enjoy that, and I thrived on it, and that's what I look forward to every time, is meeting new people, getting to know them, and building the trust with them.
Yeah, and I can say that having been one of those people that you got to know, in addition to you enjoying meeting people, people really enjoy meeting you as well.
Thank you.
So there's something to be said in this industry for being a good communicator, being easy to talk with,
Correct.
and a good relationship builder.
Exactly. And you got to be able to give, and you give and listen. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We listen more to our friends and family, and in return, they trust you and they feel comfortable with you.
So a lot of people venture into these industries, not just the industry you're in, but most entrepreneurs at some point during their career reach a point where they wonder if maybe they made a mistake, or if maybe they're in over their head, maybe they should give up.
Yeah.
And in fact, Glenn Stearns was on our show a few episodes ago, and he said every entrepreneur at some point in their journey starts to question whether they made a mistake and whether this is going to work.
Yeah.
And there's sort of like, you start thinking about exit, and you start thinking about running through that fire and persevering. Tell us about that moment for you.
I focused a lot on a big case. In our industry, it's all about the cases that you bring in and the relationships. And that was a huge, huge relationship that I worked on for many, many months. And the big mistake I did is I just focused on that alone and nothing else. So when you do that for 6 months, you're not bringing any income, your checking account goes down to nothing. And that was a big wake-up moment for me. And that's when I said, this is it. I can't do this anymore. I have 2 children and diapers, and I'm standing at a grocery line. I knew there's nothing in my checking account because I've spent it all, but I have $1 million check from a client that I just finished closing, but it took me 6 months to do that. That was a scary moment. Do I continue doing this and put myself and my family through this? And then I had to go back and readjust and change the way I operate my practice and never look back again.
Was it partly of diversifying your customer base?
Correct.
And finding,
correct,
delegating,
helping, hiring, growing, changed my whole practice, hired coaching, people to support me, did it the right way, finally, instead of saying, I got this, right? I knew to be successful, I have to change my process, and it worked.
Yeah, almost. It sounds like when you describe it, like for a period there, you were kind of counting on one major, one major situation coming through.
Correct.
Kind of like all your eggs were in that one basket, and that's probably highly risky in your industry.
Very risky. Very risky. So, but that taught me a big lesson, right? And I diversified my practice, and now we service almost 3,000 clients because of that moment. That changed the way I think of things now.
So with a larger client base, you probably also have the opportunity for some of your clients, as their financial situation improves, they can move up with you and become some of those larger, bigger clients.
Correct. Because you have the trust, you have the relationship with them, and you know everything about them. You become very trusted. I mean, almost more than their own doctor sometimes, because you know everything about them, and you grow with them.
Oh, that's
yeah.
This is great wisdom that you're sharing.
Thank you.
So, if you were going to give advice to a person that's going to start their own financial advising career, what advice would you give them that might be the difference in them succeeding or failing?
Definitely be ready. Be ready meaning don't just jump into it without a plan. You got to have a good plan, a good business plan. You have to partner up with somebody. You have to have a mentor. You have to have a good support system. Talk to somebody that's in the industry. Work with them. and you're gonna learn so much so quickly rather than reinventing the wheel on your own. And that's the best advice I can give anybody.
So surround yourself with people that have taken this path.
Correct.
And listen to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I develop a lot of advisors now that are coming into this industry because of everything I've learned in my past, and I've designed a platform for them to learn to be good from the first 3 months, not the first 3 years. And I'm teaching them from all the mistakes I've made over the years.
That might actually be good advice for entrepreneurs in almost any discipline.
Absolutely.
Because I think over 70% of all entrepreneurial endeavors fail within the first 2 or 3 years.
Very true.
In your industry, it's higher. It's like 90%, isn't
90%, a little over 90% will fail in the first couple of years.
So who better to learn from than people who are in that 10%, that upper 10%?
Exactly, exactly. You learn so much from them, and your success curve becomes much greater in a short period of time.
Well, terrific. So, Nazih, thank you for being on the show and talking to us about this journey and this shift that you've made in your career. I'm going to have you back here in just a few minutes for our panel discussion along with our other guest, Raad.
Sounds good.
Well, terrific. It's now time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? Today's Did You Know comes from the U.S. Small Business Administration. In 2021, the population of California was just over 39 million residents. The Office of Advocacy reported that there are 4.2 million small businesses in the state of California. That means that over 10% of the population own or operate a small business. It's now time for our Leadership Countdown. It's now time for our Leadership Countdown. Today's countdown comes from entrepreneur.com. Today we count down the 5 benefits of being a solo entrepreneur. Number 5, you'll keep your relationships intact by avoiding the stresses of running a business with a friend or relative. Number 4, you don't have to explain yourself to anyone. Number 3, there's no debate about who is doing more. Number 2, you won't be financially married to business partners. And the number 1 advantage of being a solo entrepreneur is you get to call your own shots. Stay right here. We'll be right back with Raad Ghantous after this short break. The Bringing Learning to Work program is our way of connecting the faculty of Cal State Fullerton with the business community of Orange County and Southern California. We have over 72 training programs that are available via distance or face-to-face. And the faculty come to your company and they deliver the training to your employees.
The Bringing Learning to Work program is really fundamentally, it's leadership programming. We do diversity and emotional intelligence training. We partner with Cal State Fullerton because they had subject matter experts in these fields, and we're really fortunate and privileged to be able to do that.
Many companies can't afford training and development personnel, and so this is a great opportunity to leverage Cal State's faculty to help them develop their learning programs.
The leadership of the center and the students allow me to not only bring leadership development to my company, but allow me to interact with some amazing students who have grit, potential, and just amazing futures in front of them, and I get to take part of that. It's a wonderful feeling.
When your organization is ready to develop its talent, reach out to the Center for Leadership and we'll help get you there. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Our next guest is Raad Ghantous. Raad's career spans over 20 plus years and includes extensive experience working for design industry giants and architectural icons. such as Wimberly, Allison, Tong, and Gu, Hirsch, Bedner, and Design One. Raad has had opportunities to work on projects in diverse global locations. From his international work and personal global experience, Raad seamlessly integrates creativity and design with project management and business strategy. Please welcome a great person and personal friend, Raad Ghantous.
Jay, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me to be on the show.
Thanks for joining us. Let's talk a little bit more about the design industry and what it's like to be in that industry in the corporate settings.
So the design industry has multifaceted. There are smaller firms, there's larger firms. Some of them focus on residential only, some of them focus on corporate as in like banks and office spaces, and ones like the ones I worked for focused on hospitality. And in that space, which was intriguing for me, is you have multiple layers of different spaces that you get involved in. So you have the equivalent of residential in terms of like guest rooms or what have you, restaurants, etc. And the reason why I'm emphasizing this a little bit is because part of that interest was that you were basically providing a consultancy for businesses that have to make a profit. So those firms are a little bit more of a just not a design, but also a business consultancy. And that was always appealing to me, right? In that environment, when you first start, you're basically very much design focused. So you're basically acting in a support capacity to maybe senior people or associates and part of a team environment. So that's always the case because the scale of these projects is not a one-person thing at all. So there's team dynamics, there's roles. It's a high-intensity environment because you are working for high-intensity corporate clients. So you're working for the likes of Hyatt's and Ritz-Carlton's, whatever, and your client really at those firms are management, right? So they're basically not spaces where you're just sitting there drawing all day, right? You have to be versatile in how you approach things. And as you grow in your role and you grow within that company or others in the industry, your roles become more multifaceted as well, right? I worked in that environment for about 7 years, maybe 8 years, 10 years, and clearly wanted to go for that sector from the very beginning because it was appealing to me versus like pure residential or purely doing offices. It's also very high intensity in terms of the time demand on you. Right, so the creative process is not something that you can turn on at 8 o'clock in the morning and turn off at 5 o'clock at night. Many times your solution-driven design time happens at, I don't know, in the middle of the evening, right, at 11 o'clock or 12, and you basically having to put it down versus wait till the next morning to do it. So it's a very high intensity, it's almost addictive, the level at which you play. Right, anybody who's been in an environment that's a high intensity environment, working for a large corporate client, understands there's an adrenaline rush to doing it that way. It's the same exactly in the design industry when you're operating at that caliber and level. And I did that, like I said, for about 7 years. And it was very exciting. It was very rewarding. It was a lot of personal growth in terms of testing your own mettle, if you will, as a designer. And then also the dynamics of group dynamics that meant that you had to have the skill set to hold a presence in a room with a client, to convey creatively a solution. In a lot of cases, you're painting a picture. So you're basically, and a lot of people don't have the ability to visualize, right? So you're basically painting a business solution for their environment, and you're doing it with the aid of visual aids, your gift of gab, all these skills, these soft skills that also go into the process. So to me, it was a perfect fit for my own personality, and it gave me an outlet in terms of creativity, which also was something I enjoyed.
So, Raad, how did you know that it was time for you to venture out on your own and start your own design business?
I think I got sick and tired of telling other people telling me what to do, and there's no fun in following other people's instructions, right? But in all seriousness, I think it just was a matter of having spent enough time in corporate and having done enough of the tasks that I needed to do, growing enough, and then looking at it and going, this is not exactly how I would do it, and it was feeling a little restrictive. So with that being said, I think that was really the motivation, but at the same time, if you have an entrepreneur's spirit, you always have that unfulfilled if you're working for somebody else. And you kind of have to venture out on your own in order to try it for yourself, see if you can just build a better mousetrap.
So for you, part of what drove you to start your own design business is that that desire to really embrace your creativity.
To go to the next
to have
level.
it not be constrained.
Exactly. And I think when you're first starting down that path in any creative field, if you're lucky enough to do that, because it's a pursuit of passion, right, is you kind of are excited, and you're excited at the opportunity to be playing in that sandbox. That's a corporate environment, high intensity, great clients, name recognizable brands. And then at some point, it evolves beyond the glitz and the shiny objects, and it becomes more of a fulfillment thing. And if that's not happening for you, and you happen to have either the guts or the stupidity to actually step out and try something different, I think that's that moment of truth where you look at yourself and you go, okay, the next 20 years could be this restrictive environment, or maybe there's a better thing if I go out on my own. And that's what happened with me.
So it sounds like you're balancing the business risk with the opportunity for the creative autonomy.
Exactly. Because, I mean, this is a career. This is not a hobby, right? So you're pursuing this as a career. So there's a sort of that responsibility, adulting component, that salaried component, that, paying your bills component, living a quality of life that you choose to, evolve, right? But at the same time, I think any entrepreneur that has been in that spot and then realizes this is the safe harbor and here's the uncharted waters. And do I cast my own sails and venture into the uncharted waters? Do I have enough skills to navigate those waters that I have never really tried to navigate? And I may think I can, but I don't know that I can. And that moment is where do you cast those ropes off the moorings and just chart out, or do you basically go, no? Because the other side of it is if you realize you're not going to do that. You now basically have accepted your faith of basically accepting this limited environment, which you are going to spend the next, to the best way that you can, spend the next 20 years, 30 years, whatever your career, and then basically maybe have a golden parachute or and just walk away. Yeah, but that's the reality. And the reality of life is, in my case, I didn't have the responsibilities and the demands on me that would limit me from making that choice. I wasn't married, didn't have responsibilities of that nature. Financially, I was okay. So again, I don't want to make it sound like it's an easy thing. I had some blessings that allowed me to venture out to do that.
So in the design industry, there are a lot of try and fail. There's a lot of companies, especially solo entrepreneurs that venture out to start their own design business and don't succeed.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things that were the key for you to build a successful design business?
Good, very good question. And I think, unfortunately, it's like everything. There's a lot of stuff that's pursuits of passion. People who want to set up restaurants, people who want to open nightclubs, a coffee shop because I want to, right? There's sort of a, I want to because this is basically a fulfilling thing, passionate-wise, and I can pursue it. And at the same time, it's not really thought through because there's an aspect of practicality. There's an aspect of reality. You're paying rent on a space, perhaps. You have payroll, You always venture out thinking you can do it on your own. Because, in fact, that's where you're at, right? You look around, you're the only person. I used to manage a team of 10 people, and when I started going on my own, I'm looking around. There's nobody that I'm allocated or allocating, responsibility or giving tasks to on a Monday morning, right? It's me. So I think the thing that had worked for me, that helped me, is prior to interior design, I have an undergraduate in economics, and I did a bunch of courses for a master's degree at marketing at Drucker, so in Claremont. And so for me, I had the sense, at least most of the time, that I needed to basically also put some things in place to make this possibly not only work, but also to not rob myself from the the satisfaction and the passion of doing this, right? Because again, it's a creative outlet. I'm not doing widgets. I'm not pulling levers all day, right? And so part of why people fail, I think, is they hold on to doing it on their own too long. I think you have to know that there is a time at a critical point strategically where you need to bring on more people. And it's scary because now you got payroll. Now you got to, and if you've been lucrative a little bit and all the money's coming into your pocket, now you got to pay it out. Now you got to start thinking about this as a company versus a hobby, right? And so I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of sense of doing that, and I put those in place. I also realize that I'm in a competitive environment where there's a lot of people that are doing, to your point, that are sole businesses that don't necessarily have a clear niche of who they're serving, right? So like we talk about this in terms of corporate environments for other things, products and services, but I think you are at the end of the day providing a luxury product. It's an elective cost of expenditure for people, and what is it going to make it sustainable that you're going to basically constantly be relevant for people? So we focused on a niche for providing extensive, sophisticated services that we were providing for corporate clients to the mom and pop brick and mortars, right? And so we translated the quality of that to people that could, under normal circumstances, not afford that kind of consultancy. And then we just grew that. And we identified sectors like, for example, spa and wellness, restaurants, sectors that really needed this, that to your point were failing or have a high propensity of failing. What was the ratio for restaurants, like 6 months or something, and they're out of business? And we tried to craft the service to where it was a creative expression to help them basically run their businesses successfully, to protect their businesses from failure. And that served us very well for about, I would say, 10 to 15 years, because nobody was doing that way. If you're a large design firm, you're providing it to a very elite clientele. If you were a small design firm, you either didn't have the sophisticated layering and nuances of knowledge to do that, or you were so busy competing for that furniture sale or that little thing. We never set up where we made money on furniture sales. We sold a business consultancy that happened to express itself in a creative environment. We built stages for people, designed and built stages for people to perform their business successfully on. But it was niche. We knew it was niche. We knew that we were not going to compete with the big boys. We knew that we did not want to basically throw our hat into the bigger pool of residential design where everybody's doing bathroom and kitchen remodel, right? And we had to constantly look for opportunities to evolve the service. Because as we all know, the business environment has changed. It has continued to change. In certain sectors, it has been changing over the last 20 years, like in the wellness and spa industry. It used to be a loss leader. Now it has to basically pencil out on every square footage of leased space, right? So you got to be able to talk to the people. You have to be able to educate people, because unlike corporate clients, the mom and pops may not have the nuanced savviness to understand where you're coming from and why it's important. And you have to be price competitive. The interesting thing is all those complex layers have to be part of your reality if you're going to succeed in this, especially in a field that's a soft field, that's a luxury product, that's an elective expenditure and not a need. Because who really needs necessarily interior design? Well, I'll tell you, I've talked to some doctors and they've said, you know, I had something in mind of what I wanted my environment to be like, to project certain things, and I didn't know how to get there. So the service you provide allows me to basically project that philosophy, that corporate culture that I have to my end user, and to be able to sustain that and therefore also differentiate my brand from the guy down the street.
So every entrepreneur at some point during their entrepreneurial journey, they pause and they think, uh-oh, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe I should have stayed where I was. Could you describe maybe one of those larger moments for you and how you decided to either persevere or make things better?
I'm giggling a little bit because I don't think that it's actually a moment. I think every day that I have been doing this on my own, there's certain degree of what you just described is part of my, in the back of my mind, reality. It became even more so when I added more people to the company, right? And I think anybody who is, business ebbs and flows. The majority of our business really that's sustainable is word of mouth, right? And the people that are looking at our services are impacted by economic realities, like what's going on right now, for example. Do I spend that money on this? Do I have to put it on more critical things that I need, right? I think, and again, it's a luxury product. It's a selective thing. Every day, Jay, I go through this, right? And I think when the pipeline looks anemic, right, it's even more intense. When I look around and I go, okay, there's a seasonal slowdown that's going to happen in the industry. That also impacts. Like usually this time of year is seasonal slowdown. People are making decisions for what they're going to spend money on next year. You may be involved in stuff that is not necessarily going to come to fruition until third quarter of 2023. And I think every day we go through this. I can't tell you there was ever a main moment. The closest thing would be where I would basically look at my career of the last 20 years and go, do I want to continue to do this at the level of intensity that I'm doing? Okay, is it going to sustain me, right? And I look at, every time you look at corporate, you go, well, maybe somebody could just write me a check, right? And then basically I just go in, do my job, I get the check, I'm covered, I got insurance, I got all this stuff. And then you realize that the same reasons why you left corporate still exist. So the perseverance factor for me has been to bring myself back to that moment in time and to test whether that moment in time is still relevant and is still actual, which is, would I feel as free to express my approach to doing it if I was back in that restrictive environment? And that perseverance factor, because you and I talked about this, like, why do people go on and why do people don't? But the motivation for me to continue to find another way to survive, to fight another day, so to speak, is to remember that the reason why I left that environment and ventured out on my own to fulfill that part of me that's entrepreneurial is still alive and well. And because of that, I can't see myself going back. Now, do I retool what we do, how we go about it, to continue to be relevant? Yes, and that's where like your rekindled energy is like, and if you have a team of people that you're working with that are equally energized, okay, then it energizes you as well. Sometimes I don't believe in a top-down structure. I think it's more of a circle around the table, and maybe it's my love for history and mythology and the King Arthur and the Round Table, and everybody's sort of on equal basis. Like, there's no head to the table. Everybody contributes. Now, everybody's not necessarily at the same level of expertise, but we are all in it together. And if you've got some people, key people in your structure that engage and do it the same way, that way, then you feed off each other's energy. So when I'm feeling low and I'm questioning whether we should continue to do this, and I don't know, I lean on them. I look at how they're basically enjoying their job, that I was able to provide an environment for somebody to also grow. And I take solace in that, and I take energy from that, and I go, you know what? There's other layers to why we do this. It's not just the success financially or even career. We're also giving back and helping provide an environment. And you and I have talked about this in terms of leadership. You're providing an environment in which other people are growing and excelling. And that has a satisfaction factor that no amount of money written on a check is going to give you.
And you make a conscious choice then, quite a bit, to stay in the entrepreneurial sector.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it's really easy to get drawn down that rabbit hole of going, well, I don't know. I mean, part of it is I'm also a little lazy. I don't want to friggin' sit back and try to figure out what else to do now, right? I'm doing what I do. I'm enjoying what I do. I'm feeling like it's growing. But again, when you start, the growth curve is extreme. Like, you're going from here to here, and you're growing skills, and you're developing, and you're excited because that's the first time I'm doing this and the first time I'm doing that. After 20 plus years, it's not the first time I'm doing this anymore. It's not the first time that you're encountering this problem. It's almost become rote that you basically deal with it, right? So how do you continue to be energized and engaged? Because your output is creative. So you can't basically just generically put it together and push it out the door. You have to constantly be excited about this. The client that you're doing the hair salon, that's their first project. That's their livelihood. That's their dream that you're trying to engage in. And if you can't bring in that energy, you got to step away. If you've got a team of people and you're not there, let them lead the charge. So it's a conscious decision every day how you continue to be engaged in this. The entrepreneurial spirit has a responsibility that comes with it that I think is paramount. And you may step away from an industry, retire, rewire, whatever you want to call it. But if that's part of your DNA, you will continue to necessarily consciously find a way to feed it. And it may be giving back. It may be teaching. You do that. So there's a fulfillment that comes from that, to paying back, to paying it forward, that is rewarding as much as any dollar that you put in your pocket, if not even more later on in your career.
So, in the design industry,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to somebody that, if they came to you and said, I want to start my own design business, what advice would you give them? Besides, don't do it. What advice would you give them?
No, I don't think I would tell them not to do it, because for somebody to say that, respecting them, and they could be anywhere in their journey. They could be just starting, they could be midway, they could be frustrated as hell and basically just want to do it differently because they can't stand the person they work for. Like, it really depends, right? But I think that's critical. Like, you need to know where they're coming from. So when they come to me and say, well, I'd like to start my own business in the design field, I would ask them, like, tell me a little bit more about your journey. Let's find out, like, how you got here, right? And I'm listening to a couple of things. I'm listening to what's the driving motivation for them to do it, right? Is it the money only? Is it because they feel unfulfilled? Is it because they don't know what the heck else to do and they basically are bored, and this is, they took a couple of classes online and now they basically want to do their own thing? Because you want to set them up for success. You want to give them advice that will, chances are, lead them to a path that's sustainable, not take away this joy of what they're trying to do, if in fact that is the motivator, right? So I think, that being said, I would advise them, depending on where they are in their career, and most people that are in a design or creative outlet, they haven't really necessarily, 9 out of 10 times, they haven't really taken the time to develop some of their basic business skills, okay? And whether you do it yourself or you hire other people to help you with it, you need to know enough. Because if you don't, then you're going to basically bring on people that are not really going to give you the quality of service that you need to help you support your ambitions and your goals. You need to know enough. So I would say, join groups that are not just basically helping network and sell your product, but join groups that are basically maybe an advisory panel to yourself. Build a group of people around you that can give you some guidance, that could be an accountability point for you, right? Know that going in, versus like me, even though you knew it, you didn't really put it in place, and organically it kind of evolved, luckily. But if I would give the advice to build that side of it, to realize that your creative pursuit of design is sort of almost like the gravy at the end of the day. But that there's a lot of steps and a lot of building blocks that have to go into it in order for it not only to survive and thrive, but for it to continue to be that joy pursuit that you are basically looking at right now. Because if you don't, the joy will go out of it. And if that goes out of it, like in any creative field, you stop enjoying painting, you're not going to paint anymore. Those easels will go down the side, the paints will go down the sides. Cooking, same thing. Like anything that's an expression of you, you have to almost guard it. You have to be aware that you need to guard it and protect it. Otherwise, it won't be there. So it's not so much like a nuts and bolts, step 1, step 2, step 3 process. I think where you're coming from, where you're at, why you're doing it would be things I would want to know from that person. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all. And
you also alluded to the humility of knowing that we don't necessarily know everything.
Oh, is that big or what? In life and everything that you do. Yeah, absolutely.
So to surround yourself with people that
absolutely.
Might be able to counsel on different aspects of the business or different kinds of challenges that we might encounter.
Which is hard, by the way, when you're talking about things like design, because along with the passion comes the ego. In a lot of cases, people that are in this form of personal expression, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, a little bit of ego. So for you to actually be able to corral that ego enough to consciously understand that there's a humility factor here, that you basically, not only from a humility perspective, but from a benefit and growth perspective, should surround yourself with people that are better at things that you're not as good at. I'm not so good about finish selections. I'm great about space design and experiential space allocation, but I'm not really good at the layering of the finishes, per se, right? I can do it, but there are other people that can do it better. So I basically delegate that responsibility to people, whether they're there or they have the ability and the nuanced skill set that I recognize, and I want to give them the opportunity to grow, right? Because not only am I benefiting them and giving them a chance to grow, in a smart business way, I'm also benefiting my company because I'm cultivating that talent internally, which is a hell of a cheaper way to do it than try to hire it from outside.
So as you grow, bring in people that can offer different skills or different specialties,
or have the talent, but that may be raw talent to do that, right? I've come across that a couple of times in my career where I've brought people in that are not necessarily, like, let me see, do you fit all the things we need today? But actually had the core talent that could be grown internally to basically have them become not just an asset to the company, but to feel fulfilled in their own pursuits and therefore make for a better expression of themselves and their talent to the benefit of their career and for us as a company.
Well, terrific. We're going to actually put a pause on this, and I want to thank you for joining me on the show to talk about your personal journey of going from the corporate world to entrepreneurship. I'm going to have you stick around because we're going to do a panel discussion here in just a few minutes.
That's terrific. Thank you for the invite again, Jay. It's been a pleasure.
It's now time for our leadership example. Today's leadership example comes from CaminoFinancial.com. Here are the top 40 most profitable small business ventures in the United States. It's now time for our leadership lesson. Today's lesson is being delivered by Professor J.J. Jackson, the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at Cal State Fullerton.
I'm Professor John Bradley Jackson, and here is today's leadership lesson. I can tell you, startups are cool, they're fun, and no one loves it more than the founder of the startup. And in fact, sometimes they're guilty of too much enthusiasm and rushing to market. Let me take you on a tour of a concept called Lean Startup by Eric Ries. The premise of Lean Startup is that most startups don't spend sufficient time studying the marketplace and understanding their customer. So that's where it begins with a process called Lean Interview. The long interview, that is a process of meeting with people for a qualitative in-person discussion and asking about their wants, their needs. The purpose is the verification of the problem itself and then a refinement of who the customer truly is. That step is not done until you've talked to 100 people face to face, which is a huge amount of time. But after you have interviewed 100 people with that type of in-depth discussion, what you're left with is a good feeling about how you're going to provide value to the customer, and that is the value proposition. Why will they buy? And then from there, you create a specification of what the product might look like. And that could involve more discussion, again, with those prospective customers. And from there, you create what's called a minimum viable product, an MVP. Well, that's a fancy name for a prototype. The prototype is simply an image of a product. With that product prototype finished, you present it to the customer. You possibly pivot again based on their feedback, and then you're ready to begin your go-to-market push. Now, one thing you have to remind yourself as you go to market, you're still an early stage startup, and the goal is not to make money, but it's to prove that you can provide value. And with that value delivered, then you have product market fit and you're in a position to scale. I'm Professor John Bradley Jackson. This has been your leadership lesson.
Thank you, Professor Jackson, for that terrific leadership lesson. Let's bring back our two guests for a discussion, a leadership panel. Thank you, Raad and Nazih, for rejoining us.
My pleasure.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So the way this is going to work is I'm going to have three questions, and each of you have a chance to answer each question.
Sure.
Now, the first question is going to be for Nazih,
Okay.
and then Raad, you'll have a chance to answer it as well. The first question is about advice. What advice would you give an aspiring entrepreneur?
First advice would be know your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you want to get into this business for yourself? And find out what your passion is toward this industry and how you can make a difference.
Terrific. Raad?
I think by virtue of the word entrepreneur, you would think that you should go it your own. I think the advice I would say is, from the very beginning, if you have the wherewithal, build a team of people around you, even if they're not employees, but advisory board or people that you can bounce things off. Because it's a soul journey, but you could definitely use the support.
So the moment you think you have all of the answers, the decline begins.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But by virtue of the term entrepreneur, you think you should go it on your own. And you will. It'll all be on your shoulders, but surround yourself with a support system that basically you can lean on.
Eventually, you're going to figure out that you need to delegate and you need to have a good team of supporters, just like Raad said.
Well, terrific. So the second question is going to go to Raad first, and it is about mistakes. So, Raad, what was your biggest mistake you made as an entrepreneur? What did you learn from it, and how has it made you even better?
I think the biggest mistake, honestly, again, is a direct danger that happens when you're doing something like this that you're all in on, is you forget that there needs to be a balance in your life. And so you take away, since it's not a 9-to-5 thing, you take away from your other aspects of your life, your personal relationships, the balance in your life, and you put it all in your work because you're all or nothing kind of, especially at the beginning. My advice is be aware from the beginning that you need to maintain that balance as much as possible, as much as the draws on you from your work requirements and your business requirements, because when you don't, you lose that support thing that we talked about a minute ago, and you endanger it. And then it becomes harder. So my biggest mistake was I delegated all my time, all my stuff went into the work, into the building of the company, all that stuff. And it had an impact on my relationships, my support, my friendships, all this stuff, which were all super critical to support me through the hard times. And so if we're giving advice here where it took years for us to get to know that this is the case. So it's advice from the very beginning. If somebody tells you who's been in our position, you need to be aware of, I think that would be something you can benefit from setting and being aware of from the very beginning. And how it's helped me, becoming aware of it has allowed me to establish more healthy balance that has only made me better in what I do in my work and business and professional pursuits, as well as a better person in all other aspects of my life.
So Nazih, same question. What's the biggest mistake you've made? What you learned from it, and how has it made you better?
Well, just like Raad said, my biggest mistake was trying to do everything by myself and investing 200% of my time and my energy into this business and forgot the life-work balance that we should always maintain. One of the biggest mistakes is not trusting others to come help me and trying to do it all by myself. Eventually, you hire the wrong people and you learn from them, and you know exactly who should be on the bus and who should be off the bus. Do they share the same passion, the same why that you have to keep the business going?
Yeah, when we start hiring people, it's like a whole new set of challenges and opportunities gets introduced into our entrepreneurial life.
Yeah. It's hard to trust somebody with what you've worked so hard for. And you decide, no, I'd rather do it myself. I can do it better. But eventually, if you keep thinking that way, you limit your growth.
All right. So the third question, and this is actually time for our final word. For our final word, each of you will have a chance to share a final pearl of wisdom with our viewers. And Raad, you're going to go second. Nazih, you're going to go first on this one. So what is your final pearl of wisdom?
Have a passion for whatever endeavor you're gonna jump into, and know everything about yourself. Do SMART goals for yourself. Do SWOT analysis on your situation, on your business. Learn what your weaknesses are. Don't be afraid of that. We all have weaknesses. And learn what opportunities are available and develop a good system for yourself, and you'll achieve a lot of success.
So soar with your strengths and manage those weaknesses.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Raad, final word.
Perfect segue, actually, because I think the final word is, and it's almost a cliche, is never stop growing, because and never stop learning, whether it's in terms of achieving that balance that we were talking about a minute ago, or doing that self-reflection, and sometimes it's brutal inventory, personal inventory that you must take for your business, yourself, in order to be at your best performance, right? And to give that to everybody who's working with you or your clients. You have to know from the beginning that this isn't something that you stop growing at, that it's endless. You're going to constantly be learning, you're constantly be growing. The minute you stop growing, I would say you question why, and it could very well be that you've run its course. That passion pursuit that you're doing is no longer energizing you, and you have to reinvent or find something. So always grow. This is not something where you stop growing at. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, not only because of being competitive, but to continue to have an engaged way about what you perform, how you perform, and what you do.
So keep growing, keep pursuing knowledge, and never think you have enough wisdom. And there you have it, our final word. Thank you, Nazih and Raad, for joining us on today's show.
Our pleasure, Jay.
Thank you for having us.
If you have a question or need advice, connect with us by email, leadership@fullerton.edu, or on Instagram at CSUF CFL. So that puts a wrap on today's show. Thank you to our featured guests, Nazih Yehya and Raad Ghantous, as well as Professor J.J. Jackson for delivering our leadership lesson. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice, where our purpose is helping you navigate your leadership journey. I'm Jay Barbuto, and on behalf of the Center for Leadership at Cal State Fullerton, we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.